Margot saw a middle-aged man on the couch, his face buried in his hands, loud sobs filling the otherwise quiet space. It always amazed her how so many people could be working a crime scene, but it could still sound quiet as a graveyard. Husband? She wasn't sure if she was asking for identification or if he'd done it. Yup. All right, walk me through it. Wes waited for Margot to slip on her protective shoe covers, then guided her into the room across the hall, which she quickly realized was a compact kitchen. The crime scene photographer was busy methodically snapping pictures from every conceivable angle, and every few seconds, the space would be boldly lit from the camera flash before returning to the dim glow from some old under-cabinet lighting. It gave the room a macabre disco vibe. She didn't need Wes to hold her hand with explanations in here. The victim, a white female, was sprawled across the floor, her terry cloth robe partly undone, revealing a plain cotton nightshirt beneath. The woman looked to be about Margot's age, maybe mid to late 30s, but the bags under her eyes and ashen complexion spoke of a life that had not, perhaps, always been kind to her. The victim's eyes were open wide, her mouth formed in a little O of surprise. Blood soaked the nightshirt and robe and pooled on the floor beneath her. A weapon was nowhere to be seen, but Margot could see tears in the woman's clothing that suggested a knife as the likely tool. 911 call came from a neighbor who said they had heard fighting for over an hour. Said this wasn't all that unusual, but this time it just sounded worse, and they were worried someone was going to get hurt. Someone did, Margot said with a sigh. What's her name? Tracy Clark. Husband is Daryl Clark. Is he admitted to doing it? Wes shrugged noncommittally. Hasn't really said much of anything yet except for, oh God, is she dead? But I'm assuming he'll crack pretty quickly once we get him down to the station. The knife was sitting right next to him on the couch when the responding officer came in. Margot scanned the scene laid out before her, trying not to make assumptions, though it wasn't a stretch to assume the husband was guilty based solely on the scant information Wes had given her. Still, a good cop knew better than to make assumptions. It led to mistakes. It was all well and fine to see where the evidence led, but too often overworked or lazy officers decided who was guilty and only looked for evidence that fit that hypothesis, to the detriment of the truth. She knew Wes wasn't a lazy cop, but she also wanted to see things for herself. There was broken glass on the floor and a drying spatter of liquid on the fridge that might have been either wine or cola. One of the chairs at the small dinette set was overturned, and 2 plates of spaghetti and meatballs were partially eaten on the table. A meatball had, at one point, been thrown against the white wall and was settled not far from the victim's foot. Is there a history of domestic disturbance from this address? You said the neighbor mentioned fights weren't uncommon. A case filled with empty beer bottles sat next to the fridge, and in the sink were the remnants of dirty dishes from preparing dinner. The knife block on the counter was missing 2 knives. One appeared to be a large chef's knife, the other a bread knife. Margot saw the handle of the bread knife sticking out of the sink. Call list a mile long. Seems like they were both in the habit of stirring shit up regularly. Few hospital visits, all her. Few times he claimed she threatened him. Looks like they were not exactly a happy couple. Margot's lips formed a thin line. Something about the scene bothered her. It wasn't that it didn't fit the hypothesis. She could practically see the fight unfold.